about how veganism isn't actually as great as you think it is. Before I start this presentation, I want to talk about the pandemic's effects on the environment. Throughout this time, we've seen a drastic decline of air pollution and greenhouse gas release as a direct result of the pandemic. Less people moving around means less vehicles and planes being used. And now that the pandemic is milder in most countries, more people are moving around and creating more pollution. We've seen what we can do against climate change when we act as a collective, and now people are looking for more ways to combat climate change and other global problems. One of the more popular ones is cutting out meat from your diet. And throughout the past couple of weeks, most people in this class have shared their experiences of going vegan, and everyone saw some kind of personal benefit from this diet change. The most common benefit was increased energy, and others had effects like decreased inflammation, milder allergies, better sleep, and some even found that veganism helped with their heart conditions. I myself also went vegetarian. I felt energetic, less bloated, less hungry. I lost weight, and I was even able to put on some muscle. But because of these benefits, people think veganism is some kind of miracle diet that even has benefits for the environment. This was evident as a common theme among the presentations last week was that veganism could supposedly save the environment and has all these benefits for our planet. But does it really? The first point I want to bring up is water waste. You probably heard some statistic like one burger takes up 1,650 liters of water to create. When you hear this fact, you think, wow, that sounds like such a waste. That water could have been given to people who don't have access to water. But is that the full picture? What they're not telling you is that 94% of that water is in the form of green water or rainwater, water that would have landed on the ground that the cows are on, regardless whether or not they were there. And that rainwater isn't there for cows to drink. It first goes to the grass, which the cows then eat. So, a lot of the water is rainwater. What about that 6% of fresh water? Actually, can I restart this line?
Yeah.
Okay. Many sources would say that one single burger would take 1,650 liters of water to produce. But is that the full picture? When you hear this fact, you think that's a lot of water, and that water could have been given to people who need it. But that isn't the case. What they're not telling you is that 94% of the water used to grow livestock is in the form of rainwater or green water, as you can see in this chart. And that rainwater isn't used for the cows to drink. It first goes to the grass, which the cows then eat. That rainwater would have landed on that ground regardless of whether or not the cows were there. Okay, so a lot of that water is rainwater, but what about that 6% of fresh water? That's still a lot of water. People act as if the water that the cows drink just miraculously disappears. It doesn't. The cow pees out the water, and it goes through the water cycle, and we can use that water. So our real worry is using our freshwater reserves, right? Well, according to a U.S. Geological Survey, 70% of the world's freshwater reserves goes to irrigating crops. The second point I want to bring up is the food waste that goes into feeding livestock. It's natural to think that since cows or sheep are herbivores and we're omnivores, we can eat the same thing. So why are we giving all this food that we can eat to these animals that are causing so many of our problems? Well, actually, we can't eat most of the feed that's given to livestock. They have a very different digestive system than humans, as well as a special kind of bacteria that helps them digest the glucose that makes up cellulose, something that humans don't have. And as for the actual food that is used to feed livestock, 86% of it is inedible for humans. Furthermore, that 86% is actually made of byproducts of foods that we eat. What happened to the husk on the corn that you ate? You eat rice? What happened to the straw that held that rice? It was all fed to livestock. And if you think about it, they're essentially upcycling foods that we can't eat into animal and dairy products. And speaking about food, about 50% of the world's fertilizer is made of animal manure. So while animals do take some of our food, we're able to grow 50% of our crops because of them. The third point I want to bring up is the greenhouse gas emissions of livestock. As you all know, when certain livestock animals burp, most notably cows, they produce methane. And methane is a large contributor to climate change, contributing almost 11% of greenhouse gases. But how much of that methane is actually from enteric fermentation, or the burps of livestock? Well, according to the EPA, only 27% of it. meaning livestock burps only count for 2.97% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. Methane is also part of a natural cycle called the biogenic carbon cycle. When the H2O, well, when the H2O and CO2 from the atmosphere is photosynthesized into plants, which livestock then cows eat, it turns into methane, which is CH4. That cow then burps out the methane, and in around 10 years, it turns back into CO2 and H2O. What this means is that if the amount of livestock does not increase, then they're not adding on to the total amount of greenhouse gases, meaning they're not adding additional warming. And the amount of cows in the US in the past 20 years has basically stayed the same. While on the other hand, when carbon dioxide is created from fossil fuels, there is no cycle. It just builds up and stays in the air. So in short, not eating animals or going vegan isn't as great as you think it is. In fact, according to Dr. Frank Mitlerner, a specialist in animal science and air quality, as well as a professor at UC Davis, he said if 100% of the US went vegan, the reduction in greenhouse gas emissions would only be 2.6%.
Really?